began not with a bullet, but with a lie. In 1940, as German bombers darkened the skies over Britain, MI6 faced a silent invasion, not of tanks, but of spies. The Abwehr, Germany's intelligence service, had sent dozens of agents to infiltrate British soil. Some landed by parachute in the countryside. Others arrived by sea, posing as refugees or businessmen. But what the Germans didn't know was that nearly every single one of them would soon be working for the British Operation Double Cross, or XX, as it was coded, became one of the most daring and psychological gambits of the Second World War. Conceived in the tense, early months after the fall of France, the operation was spearheaded by MI5's 20 Committee, so named because XX represented Double Cross. Their mission, to turn captured German agents into British double agents and use them to feed the enemy a diet of half-truths, deception, and carefully engineered lies. One of the first to be captured was an agent known as Snow, real name Arthur Owens, a Welshman with divided loyalties. Owens had been recruited by the Abwehr before the war, but quickly offered his services to MI6. From his small London flat, under British control, he began transmitting fake intelligence back to Germany, reporting on non-existent airfields and phantom ship movements. It was the beginning of a deception network that would expand across the British Isles. The challenge was immense. Each double agent had to be believable, consistent, and convincing to the Germans, often writing letters, sending coded transmissions, or meeting enemy handlers under false pretenses. Mistakes meant execution, not only for the agent but for entire cells. As historian Ben McIntyre later wrote, the success of Double Cross depended not on force, but on faith. The enemy's faith in lies so artfully told, they became indistinguishable from truth. By 1941, MI6 and MI5 had built an intricate web of double agents. Names like Garbo, Tricycle, Zigzag, and Tate formed the backbone of Britain's secret war. Each was a real individual, often eccentric, sometimes criminal, but united by a common cause: deception. They reported imaginary troop deployments, falsified convoy routes, and invented resistance networks. Every false message sent from London to Berlin was an invisible bullet designed to mislead and delay. But it was not without cost. Agents like Eddie Chapman, codenamed Zigzag, lived under constant suspicion. A safecracker turned spy, Chapman parachuted into Britain from Nazi-occupied Norway, only to be captured by MI5. Offered a choice between the hangman's noose and espionage, he chose the latter and became one of Britain's most effective double agents. His loyalty, however, was a constant question. MI6 documents later revealed internal arguments about whether Chapman could be trusted, or whether he played both sides until the very end. In a memo dated July 1942, one MI6 officer wrote, "Our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness. These men and women live in shadows, and shadows have no allegiance." It was a chilling reminder that deception was a double-edged sword. The impact of Operation Double Cross rippled far beyond the British Isles. False reports sent by MI6 double agents caused the Luftwaffe to waste fuel and bombs on decoy targets. Entire German divisions were held back from critical fronts because of misleading intelligence about phantom invasions. When the British launched operations in North Africa and later in Sicily, the groundwork for misinformation had already been laid by these invisible soldiers. As the war dragged on, MI6 analysts began to realize something extraordinary. The Germans believed their double agents so completely that British intelligence could shape the enemy's perception of the entire war. The line between truth and fiction blurred, and it would stay that way for years. In the aftermath of the war, when captured Abwehr files were studied at Camp 020, interrogators discovered that not a single German agent sent to Britain had successfully escaped detection. Every one of them had been caught, turned, or executed. Operation Double Cross was, by any measure, a complete success, and yet its details remained classified for decades. The operation revealed a darker truth about modern warfare. That control of information could be more powerful than control of territory. Lies, carefully planted and skillfully tended, could alter the course of history as surely as any battle fought with guns and tanks. But the question lingered. How far could MI6 push the limits of deception before they deceived even themselves? That question would be tested in the years ahead, as the shadow war moved from Britain's shores to the cafes of Lisbon, where a charming, unpredictable spy named Dushko Popov was about to take center stage in one of the most dangerous operations MI6 would ever attempt. Lisbon, 1941, a city of whispers. In neutral Portugal's capital, spies from every nation moved through smoke-filled cafes, embassy halls, and hotel corridors. Here, in this uneasy meeting ground between Axis and Allied worlds, the war was fought not with bullets, but with secrets. Among them stood one of MI6's most remarkable operatives, a suave Yugoslav playboy named Dushko Popov, codenamed Tricycle. His charm and danger were equal in measure, and both would change the course of the war. Popov's journey into the world of espionage began long before his recruitment. Born into a wealthy Serbian family, he was educated in Germany and became fluent in several languages. While studying law at the University of Freiburg, he befriended a fellow student, Johann Jebsen, who would later become an Abwehr officer. When war erupted, Jebsen proposed that Popov work as a spy for Germany. But Popov had no intention of aiding Hitler. Instead, he walked straight into the arms of MI6. Under the watchful eye of Britain's intelligence chief, Colonel Tar Robertson, Popov was turned into a double agent, part of the growing network of deception that began with Operation Double Cross. His code name, Tricycle, allegedly referred to the 3 agents he managed in his network. Though some MI6 officers joked it was a nod to his extravagant social life. He was a man of contradictions, reckless yet precise, a lover of luxury and danger alike. Popov's mission was simple but deadly: infiltrate the Abwehr's intelligence operations and feed them British-crafted disinformation. The Germans saw in Popov a perfect spy, charismatic, intelligent, and well-connected. His cover story as a Yugoslav businessman gave him access to the very circles where secrets were traded for trust. In August 1941, Popov was sent by the Abwehr to the United States. His instructions were chilling. Gather intelligence on American defenses in the Pacific, especially the naval base at Pearl Harbor. Popov immediately reported this to the FBI. Carrying a German questionnaire listing detailed questions about the harbor's defense capabilities, he warned US officials that Japan might be planning an attack. But the FBI, led by the suspicious and puritanical J. Edgar Hoover, distrusted Popov's playboy demeanor. Hoover dismissed the warning, ordering Popov to stay out of trouble, a fatal oversight that would echo months later on December 7, 1941. While the Americans ignored him, MI6 understood Popov's value. In Lisbon and Madrid, he became one of Britain's key conduits of false information to the Germans. His most vital work came as part of the elaborate deception plans leading up to Operation Overlord. By 1943, Popov's reports convinced the Abwehr that Allied forces would strike southern France or Norway. Anywhere but Normandy. His charm and credibility were so great that even after D-Day, German intelligence continued to believe his fabrications, but espionage carried a price, and Popov's world grew darker with every transmission. In one intercepted letter from a fellow agent, he read, "The line between truth and survival grows thinner each day. One wrong word and we vanish." Indeed, Popov's life was a constant balance of deceit and danger. He had to maintain the illusion that he was loyal to Berlin while secretly manipulating every word sent to them. In Lisbon's Hotel Palacio, Popov often met Abwehr officers under MI6 surveillance. Waiters were MI6 informants. The piano player, an Allied contact. Every conversation was a performance, a deadly theatre where one slip could mean death. The Germans trusted him completely, even granting him high-level access to Abwehr networks throughout Europe. Yet, despite his success, MI6's internal files reveal how close he came to exposure on several occasions. One misrouted telegram, one intercepted message, and his double life would have ended before it began. What set Popov apart was not just his courage, but his composure. In an MI6 debriefing, one handler noted, he could lie to a general and make him thank him for the favor. It was this uncanny ability that made Popov indispensable to the Allied deception campaign. His intelligence, both real and false, laid the groundwork for future operations that would mislead the Germans for years. After the war, rumors spread that Popov had inspired Ian Fleming's creation of James Bond. Fleming, then a naval intelligence officer, had observed Popov firsthand in Lisbon. Indeed, some details, the gambling, the seduction, the coolness under pressure, seemed almost too perfect to be coincidence. But unlike Bond's glamorous fiction, Popov's world was one of loneliness and paranoia. Every coded message he sent could bring the Gestapo to his door. As 1943 turned to 1944, Popov's work culminated in a series of transmissions that bolstered the Allies' greatest deception: the belief that the D-Day landings would not strike Normandy. His reports caused German forces to hold divisions at Pas-de-Calais, far from the actual invasion. When Allied troops stormed the beaches on June 6, 1944, the Germans hesitated to redeploy, believing Popov's words over their own scouts. But even in victory, there were shadows. Johann Jebsen, Popov's old friend who had first drawn him into espionage, was arrested by the Gestapo and disappeared into a concentration camp. His fate remains unknown. MI6 later noted that Popov's emotional detachment cracked after that day. He lost a friend, one report read, and with him, the last illusion that espionage had honor. By the war's end, Popov had survived where many had not. His name would fade into secrecy, buried under decades of classified files. But his work, and his warning, had reshaped the intelligence landscape forever. And yet, as Popov's story closed in the smoke and mirrors of Lisbon, another MI6 operation was taking shape across the burning sands of North Africa. An even riskier mission that would push the limits of human endurance and leave behind mysteries still unsolved. The North African desert, vast, unforgiving, and silent. Beneath its endless dunes, men fought a war of shadows. While the world focused on Rommel's armored divisions and Montgomery's counterattacks, another conflict unfolded. One fought not by soldiers, but by spies. In 1942, MI6 launched a covert mission deep behind Axis lines, Operation Condor. Its purpose was simple in theory: to intercept German communications and sabotage supply routes across the Sahara. But in practice, it would become one of the most perilous undertakings of the entire war. The genesis of Operation Condor came after the fall of Tobruk in June 1942. The British Eighth Army, reeling from defeat, faced a daunting truth. Rommel's Afrika Korps seemed to know their every move. Supply convoys were ambushed, radio signals jammed, and desert patrols vanished. Somewhere in the sands, the Germans had eyes and ears. MI6 in the long range. Desert Group, an elite reconnaissance unit formed from New Zealand and British troops, were tasked with finding out how. Condor's small team operated under the guise of geologists and desert traders. Their mission area stretched from Libya to the borders of Chad, nearly 500 miles of scorching wasteland. At its heart was an improvised radio interception station hidden among dunes near Kufra Oasis. Supplies came sporadically from the air, and every transmission risked drawing German patrols. It was here that the line between man and mirage began to blur. One of the unit's few surviving diaries, written by Sergeant David Henshaw, describes the oppressive isolation. The desert listens. Every whisper feels like it carries for miles. We dig in by dusk and transmit only when the wind howls hard enough. To mask the signal, the team's task was to intercept enigma-coded messages from the Afrika Korps, transmissions sent between Rommel's forward headquarters and Berlin. What they captured could shift the balance of the desert war. Condor's success depended on coordination with the famed codebreakers at Bletchley Park. Each intercepted message, smuggled by aircraft to Cairo, was sent onward for decryption. The stakes were enormous. In early September 1942, one such message revealed that Rommel's fuel supply convoys were running critically low. This intelligence allowed the Royal Navy to ambush Axis tankers off the coast of Crete, crippling the Afrika Korps' advance just before the Second Battle of El Alamein. Condor's invisible work had quietly saved thousands of lives. But success came with suspicion. By late 1942, several Condor teams stopped reporting altogether. One aircraft, piloted by Flight Officer Gerald King, vanished en route to resupply them. Another desert patrol found only a half-buried truck, riddled with bullet holes, radios smashed, and footprints leading nowhere. MI6 records mention these disappearances in brief. Team Condor 3 presumed lost, cause unknown. Whether captured by the Germans, betrayed by local tribesmen, or swallowed by the desert, no one could say. Evidence suggests that the Abwehr had caught wind of the operation. A report discovered in captured German archives after the war described British agents disguised as explorers operating south of Benghazi. Orders were issued to hunt them down. What followed became a deadly game of cat and mouse across dunes and wadis. Desert patrols from both sides clashed in the night, quick, brutal encounters that left no survivors. The most haunting discovery came decades later. In 1958, a French survey team in southern Libya stumbled upon the wreck of a British truck half buried in sand. Inside lay faded maps, an Enfield rifle, and a rusted cipher wheel stamped "Property of the War Office." No bodies were found. The location, more than 200 miles from their last known position, raised questions historians still debate. Were they escaping pursuit, or had they gone rogue on a secret assignment no record now acknowledges? Operation Condor remained classified until the late 1980s, and even then, its details were fragmentary. What is known suggests a fragile alliance between MI6 and local nomadic tribes who guided agents through terrain where compasses failed and sandstorms erased every trace. Some oral accounts from Tuareg elders speak of white men with talking boxers who disappeared one night during the Great Khamsin Winds, a legend that aligns eerily with Condor's final transmissions. The operation also hinted at the growing complexity of intelligence warfare. Technology, once the domain of soldiers, now became a weapon of spies. Portable radio sets, codebooks, and direction-finding equipment replaced rifles and bayonets. Every intercepted signal could mean victory or death. And yet, despite their bravery, most Condor operatives never received recognition. Their names were omitted from official rolls, their deeds buried beneath the sands they once crossed. By early 1943, as Rommel retreated toward Tunisia, Condor was quietly shut down. MI6 issued a simple statement to Cairo Command: "Field operations concluded. Results satisfactory." Behind those words lay the truth. Half the teams had vanished, and the desert had claimed the rest. Only fragments of their messages survived, scattered through declassified files, like echoes of voices lost to time. To this day, the full story of Operation Condor remains unsolved, a war fought in silence, where the wind itself carried the whispers of men who never came home. But from its ashes rose a lesson that MI6 would carry forward. Deception and intelligence could move armies without firing a single shot. And as the desert fell quiet once more, a very different plan was already taking shape in the cold, bureaucratic halls of London. One that would use not the living, but the dead to turn the tide of war. In the spring of 1943, a tide of desperation swept through Britain's War Office. The Allies were preparing to invade southern Europe, but the question was where. Hitler expected an attack in Greece or Sardinia. The real target, however, was Sicily, the key to controlling the Mediterranean. To strike there, MI6 and British naval intelligence needed to deceive the entire German High Command. The plan they conceived was unlike any before it. A deception that would use a corpse, a briefcase, and a story so convincing it would reshape the course of the war. Its name, Operation Mincemeat. It began in a dimly lit room beneath the Admiralty, where intelligence officers Charles Cholmondeley of MI5 and Ewan Montague of Naval Intelligence worked to outwit the Abwehr. They needed to plant false documents that would convince the Germans the Allies planned to invade Greece. But how could they ensure those documents reached German hands and seemed authentic enough to be believed? Their answer lay in an idea first floated by Ian Fleming, then serving as a naval intelligence planner. Deliver them via a body that appeared to have died in a plane crash at sea. The team acquired the body of a 34-year-old homeless Welshman named Glyndwr Michael, who had died after ingesting rat poison. In death, he would serve one final mission. Under the codename Major William Martin, Royal Marines, his new identity was meticulously constructed, complete with a fiancée named Pam, love letters, a photograph, keys, bus tickets, a theatre stub, and bank receipts. Every item in his pockets was chosen to humanize him, to make the illusion complete. The ruse depended on timing and location. The body would be dropped off the coast of neutral Spain, where pro-German agents operated freely. The briefcase chained to his wrist contained falsified invasion plans, suggesting Allied landings in Greece and Sardinia. The hope was that Spanish authorities, sympathetic to Berlin, would pass the papers to the Germans. If they believed the documents were genuine, Hitler would shift his forces away from Sicily. In the early hours of April 30th, 1943, the British submarine HMS Seraph surfaced off the coast of Huelva, Spain. The crew, under Captain Bill Jewell, read a short prayer before sliding the body into the waves. "May God receive his soul and may his death serve his country," Jules said quietly. As dawn broke, the current carried Major Martin toward the shore. Within hours, Spanish fishermen discovered the body and notified local authorities. British officials in Madrid feigned alarm, demanding the return of the briefcase, a reaction carefully scripted to heighten German interest. The documents, as intended, were secretly copied and sent to Berlin. Abwehr analysts pored over them, concluding that the invasion would strike Greece. Hitler himself, convinced by the meticulous details, ordered critical panzer divisions and Luftwaffe squadrons to reinforce the Balkans. When the Allies stormed Sicily on July 9, 1943, German defences were spread too thin to repel them. The deception had worked, spectacularly. But beneath this triumph lay unsettling questions. How much of the success was due to planning, and how much to chance? The Spanish pathologist who examined the body had doubts about the cause of death, noting inconsistencies in the supposed drowning. Yet his concerns were ignored, buried under political pressure. The Germans, eager to believe what they already hoped was true, accepted the evidence without suspicion. It was deception elevated to art and self-delusion. In London, Montagu and Cholmondeley received word of the operation's success through coded messages. One read simply, "Mincemeat swallowed whole." The phrase would become legend within intelligence circles. But the secrecy was absolute. Even the crew of HMS Seraph was sworn to silence for decades. Years later, when the story became public, Ewan Montagu published his account, "The Man Who Never Was." But even then, certain files remained sealed. It wasn't until 1996 that Glindra Michael's true identity was officially acknowledged, and a plaque placed at his grave in Huelva honoured his sacrifice. Glindra Michael served as Major William Martin, Royal Marines. Historians still debate how much the operation truly influenced Hitler's decisions, but declassified Enigma intercepts confirm its impact. The Germans reinforced Greece just days before the Sicily invasion began. Without that misdirection, Allied losses might have been catastrophic. Operation Mincemeat demonstrated that victory in modern warfare required more than courage. It required illusion, manipulation, and nerve. It blurred the boundary between espionage and theatre, between truth and deception. As one MI6 memo later noted, success came not from the strength of armies, but from the faith placed in a dead man's pockets. Yet for all its brilliance, Mincemeat left behind a lingering unease within the ranks of MI6. How far could they go in fabricating realities? How much control did they truly have over what the enemy, or even their own allies, believed? As Europe reeled from the invasion of Sicily and the tide of war turned, the British intelligence machine prepared for its most ambitious deception yet. It would require dozens of double agents, entire phantom armies, and a web of lies so complex it would hold even the sharpest German minds captive. It would be called Operation Fortitude, and it would decide the fate of D-Day. By late 1943, the Allies were ready to reclaim Western Europe. The long-awaited invasion, codenamed Operation Overlord, would strike the Normandy coast. But success hinged on one critical element: surprise. If the Germans guessed the true invasion site, the beaches would become slaughter fields. And so MI6, alongside the London Controlling Section, conceived one of the most elaborate deception plans in military history. Its name was Operation Fortitude. Fortitude was not a single plan, but a vast network of lies. It was divided into two main efforts: Fortitude North, designed to convince Hitler that an Allied invasion would strike Norway, and Fortitude South, meant to persuade the German High Command that the main assault would fall at Pas-de-Calais, the shortest crossing from England to France. To make the illusion believable, MI6 would need every trick in the book: double agents, fake radio traffic, inflatable tanks, dummy aircraft, and fabricated armies that existed only on paper. At the center of it all stood MI6's prized double agent, Juan Pujol Garcia, known to the Germans as Agent Garbo. Having already proven himself during earlier operations, Garbo became the linchpin of Fortitude South. From a modest flat in London, he transmitted hundreds of coded messages to his Abwehr handlers, building the fiction of an entire Allied army group, the 1st US Army Group, or FUSAG, supposedly commanded by General George S. Patton. In reality, FUSAG was a ghost, an army of canvas, rubber, and radio waves. Every detail of Fortitude was meticulously crafted. British engineers constructed dummy landing craft along the Kent coast, visible to Luftwaffe reconnaissance planes. Radio operators sent constant chatter between units that did not exist. Even truck tire tracks were deliberately laid out to simulate military buildup. German analysts studying aerial photographs saw what they expected to see: an army massing opposite Calais, ready to strike. But fortitude was more than stagecraft. It was psychology. The Abwehr already trusted Garbo implicitly. Over the years, MI6 had allowed small pieces of true intelligence to reach Germany through him, bolstering his credibility. Now his false reports became gospel. In one message sent on June 5, 1944, just hours before D-Day, Garbo warned the Germans that the Normandy landings were merely a feint. The real invasion, he insisted, would come weeks later at Calais. Berlin believed him. When Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy on June 6th, the deception held. Field Marshal von Rundstedt, commanding the Western Front, hesitated to release reinforcements from Calais. Hitler, convinced by Garbo's reports, ordered panzer divisions to remain in the north. For 7 crucial weeks, those forces sat idle while the Allies secured their foothold in France. The success of D-Day owed as much to the ghosts of fortitude as to the soldiers who stormed the shore. Yet behind the triumph was a deeper tension. The double agents, men and women who lived between life and death, were beginning to crack under the strain. One, codenamed Brutus, nearly exposed the operation after suffering a breakdown. Another, Tate, was interrogated by his German handlers via radio and barely maintained his cover. The MI6 20 committee, overseeing the double-cross system, worked night and day to ensure the network did not unravel under its own weight. In a classified memo from June 1944, an MI6 officer wrote, "We have built a wall of illusions so high that we ourselves must now climb carefully lest we believe our own creation." It was a prescient warning. The deeper the Allies went into deception, the more blurred the line between control and chaos became. Fortitude's influence extended beyond the beaches of Normandy. Even as late as July 1944, long after the success of Overlord, the Germans still expected a second invasion at Calais. Entire divisions remained fixed in position, awaiting an attack that would never come. By the time they realized the truth, the Allies were already pushing through France toward Paris. After the war, declassified documents revealed just how intricate the operation had been. More than 30 double agents contributed to the deception, transmitting over 500 messages in the weeks leading up to D-Day. None were caught. Not one German agent successfully infiltrated Britain. Operation Fortitude had not only fooled Hitler, it had outperformed the wildest hopes of its creators. Still, mystery surrounded the inner workings of the operation. Certain files marked secret not to be released until 2045 remain sealed. Historians believe they contain details of high-level communications between MI6, the US Office of Strategic Services, and Soviet intelligence, proof perhaps of how far the Allies went to maintain the illusion. One question endures: were all the agents truly loyal? Or did some play their own double games, lost forever in the fog of deception? Fortitude changed the nature of warfare. It proved that information, carefully crafted and ruthlessly delivered, could alter the fate of nations. The invasion that never was saved, the invasion that truly mattered. But as the Allies advanced and Nazi Germany crumbled, MI6 turned its attention to a new and more elusive target: the scientists, engineers, and intelligence officers of the collapsing Reich. Many would vanish into the ruins of the Third Reich. Others would resurface under new names, in new countries. And in the chaos of the war's final days, MI6 would launch one last operation, one still shrouded in secrecy and rumor. Its codename, Operation Clowder. April 1945, Germany was collapsing. The Reich, that once stretched across Europe, was now a wasteland of ruins and retreating soldiers. Yet as Allied forces closed in from the west and the Soviets from the east, another war was unfolding. A secret race to capture the minds behind Hitler's war machine. Deep inside MI6 headquarters, a new directive was issued under the codename Operation Clowder. Its objective: locate, secure and extract Nazi scientists, intelligence officers, and research archives before the Soviets could seize them. The mission began in the final weeks of the war, when British intelligence realized that technology, not territory, would define the world that followed. Jet propulsion, chemical weapons, advanced radar, and even atomic research were now the most valuable prizes on Earth. But MI6 faced a dilemma. The German scientists who possessed that knowledge were scattered, fleeing, or already in Soviet hands. Operation Clowder was born from that urgency, a desperate bid to prevent Britain's post-war future from being decided in Moscow. Led by Colonel Henry G. Stevens, a veteran intelligence officer stationed in Brussels, Clowder's first task was to identify key figures in German military science. Among the targets were Werner von Braun, head of the V2 rocket program, and Dr. Hans Kammler, the SS general who had overseen secret weapons projects across occupied Europe. Officially, the Americans led much of the capture effort under Operation Paperclip, but MI6, operating independently and quietly, had its own agenda and its own secrets. Teams of MI6 agents, many disguised as British Army engineers, pushed deep into occupied Germany, sometimes days ahead of advancing Allied troops. They searched abandoned laboratories, bombed out universities, and hastily evacuated SS research sites. At one such facility near Nordhausen, the agents uncovered crates of technical documents and fragments of prototype weapons. But when they returned days later to secure the site, everything was gone. Papers, equipment, even the guards assigned to protect it. The files had vanished. Reports from the time suggest a disturbing pattern. Convoys marked as technical recovery units disappeared en route to Britain. Scientists supposedly captured by MI6 never reached London. One, Dr. Wilhelm Richter, a physicist believed to be part of the Nazi atomic research group, was last seen being escorted by British officers near Bremen. His trail ends abruptly. No official record of his capture or execution exists. A declassified MI6 memo dated May 12, 1945, offers a cryptic clue. Certain assets transferred under Clowder Directive. Status unresolved. Historians later linked this to the sudden emergence of British black sites in post-war Europe, where intelligence services interrogated German scientists in secret before handing some over to the Americans. Others were never accounted for. One of Clowder's most mysterious sub-operations took place in the Harz Mountains, where rumors of hidden SS archives drew intelligence teams into the tunnels beneath Mittelwerk, the underground factory that had built V2 rockets. What they found remains uncertain. Surviving documents reference Project Typhon, an SS initiative combining advanced propulsion studies with experimental aircraft. Witnesses describe strange diagrams, partially destroyed by explosives. Within a week, British troops sealed the tunnels, and the site was classified off-limits. To this day, no official inventory of what was removed has been released. Not all of Clowder's missions ended in silence. Some resulted in tangible success. MI6 successfully extracted radar engineers from Peenemünde and cryptographers from the Abwehr's Signal Division, many of whom later aided Britain's Cold War defense programs. But the operation's darker edges lingered in whispers. There were claims that MI6 allowed certain SS officers to escape prosecution in exchange for intelligence on Soviet military structures. A claim Britain's Foreign Office has never fully denied. By the summer of 1945, as the Nuremberg trials began, Operation Clowder was officially terminated. Its assets were absorbed into broader intelligence frameworks. Yet in MI6 archives, a final entry appears under the codename Directive Achieved, Residual Matters Outstanding. What those residual matters were remains classified to this day. In 1952, a British journalist named Andrew Lyle began investigating missing Nazi scientists. He received an anonymous envelope containing copies of correspondence between MI6 and the Ministry of Defense. One letter, marked Top Secret, mentioned personnel transfers consistent with Clowder extraction protocol. Weeks later, Lyle's flat in Kensington was ransacked and his notes disappeared. The case was never solved. His obituary, published 2 years later, described his unfortunate death in an automobile accident. Historians today can only reconstruct fragments of Clowder's operations. Declassified files in the National Archives hint at links between Clowder and early British missile development projects. Some evidence suggests the operation laid the groundwork for post-war intelligence cooperation between MI6 and the newly formed CIA. Yet the missing files, some marked for release only in 2055, leave key questions unanswered. What happened to the German scientists who vanished under MI6 custody? What information was so valuable that it warranted decades of secrecy? And how far did Britain go to secure its technological edge in the emerging Cold War? Operation Clowder was both an end and a beginning, the closing chapter of Britain's shadow war against the Axis, and the opening act of a new global struggle fought in laboratories, ministries, and intelligence vaults. It marked the moment when World War II's espionage gave way to a new kind of conflict, one where truth was classified, victory was silent, and the enemies were never clearly seen. The files that remain sealed ensure that Operation Clowder's full story, and the fate of those who vanished into it, may never be known. The war may have ended in 1945, but the secrets it birthed still echo in the quiet corridors of intelligence buildings today, hidden beneath the words that began it all. This operation does not exist.